Ancient accounts say the Lord rained sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah, bringing an end to the cities, their inhabitants, and the surrounding vegetation. For some, it's nothing but a myth. For others, a reminder of judgment and mercy, severity against corruption and care for those who heed the warning. For centuries, the question persists. Did these cities exist? Where were they? And what was the real cause of their disappearance? In recent decades, excavations in nearby areas have brought concrete clues. Layers of ash, traces of extreme heat, and artifacts abruptly cut off tell a sudden, violent story. Researchers connected soil data, timelines, and ancient accounts, and the hypothesis gained traction. Maybe one of those infamous cities has finally been found. What archaeologists describe is a scene of destruction consistent with an event of enormous energy. It's not just walls collapsing. It's the mark of something that burned everything around it and silenced life in an instant. The match with the biblical picture stands out and raises new questions. If this lead pans out, we won't be seeing just ruins. We'll be seeing a meeting point between history, archaeology, and faith. When Genesis opens the scene of Sodom and Gomorrah, it doesn't start with ruins, but with abundance. The Jordan Plain, where these cities stood, is described as well-watered, almost like a garden. Lot lifts his eyes and sees a promising place, a land that looked like it guaranteed a future. Everything there pointed to prosperity. Except beneath that appearance, public life had taken another turn. It wasn't just a handful of bad choices. The whole culture had leaned away from God. Violence, corruption, and disrespect for others had become the norm, and what should have brought shame was celebrated in the public square. It's in that contrast that the story takes a decisive step. The God who sees what's hidden decides to act. Justice isn't haste, and before judgment comes a chance. Then a rare, tense dialogue unfolds. Abraham draws near and intercedes. He doesn't defend the cities on merit. He appeals to the possibility that there might be upright people there. He starts high, 50 righteous, and goes down with humble boldness, 45, 40, 30, 20, until he reaches 10. Each reduction reveals two things at once: God's patience in listening and the real weight of the evil that had spread. The question hangs in the air like a taut wire. Would there at least be a small core capable of holding back the collapse? What would happen when the heavenly visit reached the gates of Sodom? Abraham returns to the Lord with humble boldness. He asks, negotiates, lowers the number, until he hears that because of 10 righteous people the city would be spared. Gen 1832. In that conversation, two sides are revealed: justice that doesn't ignore evil, and mercy that looks for reasons to preserve. The problem is that those 10 weren't there. Two messengers arrive in Sodom and find Lot. They bring a clear warning and a short deadline: leave now. Lot hesitates, so does his family. Even so, they're practically pulled out because the sentence was closing in. Then the text is direct. From heaven, sulfur and fire fall on Sodom and Gomorrah. Gen 1924. It's quick. It's devastating. The fertile plain turns to ash, the cities to silence. Few escape: Lot and his 2 daughters. His wife, tied to the past, looks back and becomes a pillar of salt. It's not just a report of ruin. It's a mirror pointing to choices, delays, and warnings ignored. It also speaks of a God who postpones judgment as long as there are those who turn back to what is right. And one detail keeps stirring the curiosity of readers and scholars. Over millennia, the exact location of these cities has been lost to history. Where, after all, were Sodom and Gomorrah? And what marks did they leave on the map and in memory? For centuries, maps and legends pointed in opposite directions. Some swore the biblical cities lay under the Dead Sea. Others said they slept beneath desert dunes. Researchers and adventurers combed the region for any clue. The theories piled up, but a place that fit the details of the ancient account was missing. In recent years, one name has gained traction: Tal el-Hammam. In the Jordan Valley, northeast of the Dead Sea, excavations brought to light a large Bronze Age city, surrounded by imposing walls and gates. Everything points to a prosperous hub of trade and urban life. And then, around 1650 BC, the thread of history suddenly snaps. The damage recorded in the layers doesn't look like an earthquake or an ordinary fire. The soil holds dense ash and melted pottery. subjected to temperatures beyond what the technology of the time could produce. Mud bricks were vitrified. Structures seemed to have been shattered by a sudden force, like an impact coming from above. There are no signs of slow rebuilding, just interruption. Each new trench adds pieces to the puzzle. If it wasn't a tectonic fault, if it wasn't war, what event generated so much energy and scattered debris like that? When researchers dug into the destruction layer, something jumped out. Marks typical of a high-heat explosion, like what happens when a meteor breaks up in the atmosphere. This kind of event releases energy capable of producing shock waves and a thermal pulse that topples structures and ends lives in seconds. The parallel with the biblical account appears immediately: fire coming from the sky. Two languages, the same reality of violence and surprise. The effects spread everywhere. Under the rubble, human remains appear with fractures and scattered bones, a sign that bodies were thrown by the force of the wave. Many were buried by ash and debris with no time to escape. Around the city, the agricultural belt, once productive, also collapsed. The soil layers show deposits of salt mixed with the explosion material and falling fragments. This salinization blocks planting for generations and helps explain why the region would have stayed barren for centuries. A detail that echoes the biblical description of a desolate land. There's also a symbol that grabs attention: salt scattered across the ground. It points back to the story of Lot's wife, turned into a pillar of salt when she looked back. In the sacred text, it's an act of judgment. In the geography, it's the mark left by an extreme shock. Tal el-Hammam is not just a point on the map. For many archaeologists and Bible scholars, it may be ancient Sodom. If that link is correct, then we're not just talking about ruins. We're talking about a message that crosses centuries. A message that insists on being heard. The scorched stones and the destruction layer reveal something sudden and intense. There are signs of extreme heat, traces of salt, and a long period of abandonment in the region. It doesn't look like a simple urban collapse. It looks like a marker left on the landscape to remember a line that was crossed. And that leads us to a straight question. What is this story trying to teach us? In the New Testament, Peter recalls Sodom and Gomorrah as an example for those who choose to live without reverence for God. Cities reduced to ashes to warn later generations. 2 Pet 2:6. The message echoes today. God is patient and merciful, but He is also holy and just. Wrongdoing doesn't go unanswered forever. Some say faith and science walk on separate tracks, but discoveries like this show something else. Archaeology doesn't replace Scripture. It helps shed light on what the text already affirmed. When the biblical narrative describes a fiery, sudden destruction, and the site shows exactly that kind of sign, the conversation changes tone. It's not forced proof, it's a convergence of clues. Whether the world accepts the label Sodom or not, the parallel is hard to deny. In Luke 17:28-30, Jesus points to the days of Lot as a picture of what will come. On the day he left the city, fire and sulfur fell from the sky and everything ended. He says it will be like that when the Son of Man is revealed. It's not an archaeological reminder, it's a spiritual warning. The story didn't stay stuck in the past. It moves forward, and there will be a moment when God's patience reaches its limit and judgment reappears. That's why the possible location of Sodom stirs more than academic curiosity. It connects faith and ground, text and terrain. If those broken walls and layers of ash are what we suspect, they echo something direct. The biblical accounts aren't mere fables. They speak of places, times, and choices that brought real effects. The ruins, silent, still speak. They say that God is patient, but not indifferent. That He offers mercy, but doesn't legitimize evil forever. Every displaced stone reminds us that ordinary decisions, buying, selling, planting, marrying, living the daily routine, can numb us until the day reality wakes us up. Then the question changes tone. If the signs reappear and the story moves toward its tipping point, how are we living now? What are we keeping in our hearts when everyday life feels too safe? And above all, what does it mean to be ready when the Son of Man is revealed? Just as Lot was urged to flee without looking back, we're also called to break with what holds us and move toward the salvation God offers. That may be the hardest and at the same time most comforting truth. In the midst of judgment, A call to safety still echoes for anyone who decides to listen. So when the name Sodom comes up, don't treat it like a distant legend. It's a warning carved in stone, ash, and salt, marks that archaeology has been bringing to light before everyone's eyes. Before you go, if this content spoke to you, give it a like and subscribe to the channel. In the comments, say which detail of this journey caught your attention the most. In the next episode, we'll keep connecting the dots between the Bible and archaeological discoveries. Turn on the bell so you don't miss it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. May God guard your path and keep your heart open to what He is doing now. See you next time.